All right, what's up, brother?
What's going on, man?
Good win by your Phillies this afternoon.
Yeah, they tried to give it up, but we'll take it. We'll take it and move on to game two. As we say,
Yep.
three down, 10 to go.
That's all that matters. Listen, even this morning I said today was going to be huge. If they could somehow win the Rangers Suarez game, and then you got Wheeler and Nola going back to back, I'll take it.
They're trying to go out of Atlanta being up too well.
I'll take it. Listen, get that rest and set the rotation up for the next round. Because I think the next series, I think the Dodgers and Padres are going to go a full 5 games.
Oh
But
yeah. Oh yeah.
But all right, so welcome. As I had mentioned previously, this is my brother Kyle, and it's Fuck Dallas week. It's one of the two best weeks of the year. And I figured who better when every Sunday after the Eagles game, the week before, he's like, all right, happy Fuck Dallas week. So welcome.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. There's no time out of the year that we look forward to more.
No, not at all. So let's just jump right into it. And I talked a little bit about this before you came on, and the fact of the matter is they're in Dallas, we're in Philadelphia. The geography makes no sense. Yeah, they've been in the NFC East since 61, I think it was. But so you have that kind of natural rivalry. But why is the geography? Why are the Giants not our biggest rival? Why is it fuck the Giants week or fuck Washington week? Why is it what makes the Dallas rivalry so special?
Well, I think for me, Dallas was always the bigger brother in the division. They always had the success that we always wanted. So I think it was born out of jealousy that you love to hate success. Same reason why a lot of people hate the Yankees, hate Duke, hate all these teams. It's because of success. You respect the success, but you hate the fact that you can't win, right? And they were winning, and I think that's what spawned the hatred. I mean, for me personally, it was the star. I hate stars to this day. I don't go outside at night. I don't look up at the stars at night for that reason.
No telescopes for you.
No telescopes for me, buddy. I hate them.
All right. So I kind of thinking I can go one of two ways with this, but let's keep going with that. And do you think that feeling is reciprocated? Maybe not so much today, but during the heyday of that rivalry, the 90s, I would say, is probably the height of the Dallas hatred. Do you think it's reciprocated? Do fans in Dallas feel the same way about Philly?
I don't think to that extent, and I think it's because they had their eyes on the prize as opposed to a quote unquote rivalry. A rivalry is only as good as the competition. So I always tell you when Duke beats UNC Asheville 99 out of 100 times, that's not exactly a rivalry. So when Dallas was whooping our ass in the 70s and early 80s, it wasn't really a rivalry. They dominated us. So for them, I think they looked at the eyes on the prize and they were worried about winning the Super Bowl. They didn't really care that they had a rivalry with us. But that's where we set the mark. We set the bench high that we wanted to beat Dallas. That was our Super Bowl.
Gotcha. So you can say what you wanted to say. The whole Temple Penn State rivalry game.
Yeah.
I knew where that was going. There's a little bit of underlying hate in there, but so then what? So I guess going back, and I think the one thing that always sticks out to me, and you see on the NFL films, the guy from the '81 NFC Championship game when he's like, "Dallas, we hate you." Was
Yeah.
that still a byproduct of that? Just the whole, I guess, little brother syndrome, and they're up here, and or was the hatred? I guess two parts of that. Like, was that part of that, and then was the hatred as bad then as you would say it is now?
I think that was the start of a long-lasting hatred because little brother finally got to the same level as Big Brother, and then after that game, little brother defeated Big Brother. So I think from that point on, Philadelphia fans figured we have a rivalry now, and I think Dallas kind of took us more seriously as opposed to just like kind of brushing them aside and saying it's nothing. So yeah, I think that kind of took the hatred to a different level, and I think that's when Dallas did start reciprocating it.
And that, I mean, I guess that makes sense because after that NFC Championship game is when both teams kind of went through a couple lean years there. Dallas a lot more, I guess, than what we did. Maybe not by much, but I guess that makes sense. So before I get into sort of that height when everything sort of exploded then in the late 80s, early 90s. What is your take? Because I know I have my own take. I'll give you in a minute, but the difference between fans from Dallas who are Cowboy fans versus people that were born and raised in, I don't know, let's say Lehigh in Pennsylvania. Love you,
Oh,
Corey.
yeah,
But is there a difference between the two fandoms, and what's your take on that?
absolutely. I feel like fans that are from Dallas or from Texas in general, they've earned it. They live there, but they're more laid back. They're not as big of assholes, if I can speak candidly. I feel like
Absolutely.
Dallas fans that, cockroach fans, whatever we want to call them, that live in PA and come out of the woodwork every now and again are the biggest bunch of, I don't want to call them bad names, but they're bandwagon jumpers. I mean, they joined and they're most of the time they're our age or a little younger, so they saw the height of them in the 90s, right? And they're still living in the past, but they're miserable people that, and Corey, I love you, but um, they don't have a right to be a Cowboys fan, in my opinion. That's just the way I feel. I feel like I respect the Dallas fan that's in Dallas or in Texas. Doesn't mean I like them, but I'll respect them because that's their home team. Anybody else, I got no time for them.
And the lawyers wanted me to say, the views of our guests in no way, shape, or form. We don't want to get sued here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just kidding, Corey. I hope you hit them straight today. But so I guess then that to me, then that ties in because I tend to, and I grew up obviously with the whole Aikman, Irvin, Emmett Smith, triplets teams. And obviously I hate Dallas. Don't get me wrong. But I always, for some reason, I have like that. I have it's strong, but a different feeling toward like the Giants. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's more that whole, they're closer to us than what Cowboy fans are. So maybe most of the Giants fans I know, with the exception of somebody else we know who we don't want to get there, tend to be from New York. I'm thinking like Jay Silverstein, who hardcore Giants fan. And yeah, we talk trash, but he grew up that way. Or like a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, like Jaitley, like 100%, like super annoying. But I mean, the kid, like literally you cut him open and it's either going to be Miller Lite or black and gold coming out. So,
Both.
so I think that makes sense. And I would have to agree with your take that the Dallas fans from Dallas, because in our 22 years having season tickets, we've met quite a few opposing fans that have come from that area. Probably the nicest fans I've ever met. Like,
Yeah.
to be honest, other than maybe like a Jacksonville Jaguar fan who I did see a couple of them in the parking lot a couple of weeks ago. So let's get into that height now. We kind of talked about why it's intense, and I think hopefully the people out there have a good understanding, because I know a lot of times they're like, it's only football. Why do you care so much? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, because you live and breathe and die this for 16, 17 weeks a year, hopefully more. So Buddy Ryan, how would you say he fit into the whole Eagles Cowboys rivalry?
So Buddy Ryan was the epitome of Philadelphia football. I'm going to do things my way. I'm blue collar, and I don't care what you think. And he had a hatred for Dallas because I feel like he was being one of those Southern boys, and he felt like Dallas was better than what he was, and he marked it on his calendar every year to play them twice and whoop their ass. So I feel like he was beloved by Philadelphia fans because we were like, all right, we got a coach that feels the same way we do. He's a fan, but he's also a great football mind. And I feel like he fit perfectly in that rivalry because he wanted to whoop their ass just as much as the fans did.
Absolutely. So we're going to veer right a little bit here. And what is your take on Buddy Ryan overall? And I've talked about this on a couple of different podcasts. And for me, that whole Kelly Green, like I'm loving the dartboard background you have there. Like, and it's just, there's something about that Eagles lettering and those colors that just it's maybe it's a nostalgic feeling. They didn't win shit. Like they were absolutely very underachieving during that whole era. But why do we put Buddy Ryan up here, but talk so much shit on Andy Reid, who had so much success?
Because Buddy Ryan, he wore his emotions on his sleeve. So when he was in the post game press conferences, he told you what he felt. He didn't hold back. He let you know what his emotions were after the game. He wasn't PC. He wasn't politically correct. He didn't have to tell you, "Hey, I'm going to do a better job." No, he said our defense sucked. Our defense stunk. We played like a bunch of wimps, or whatever he said. He would come out and just hold people accountable, and I think that's what we respected, and that's what we kind of learned to like that with Andy, where Andy wouldn't throw his players under the bus, so to speak, but he held them accountable. I think Buddy was a completely different, where he would just hold them accountable one way or another. But that's what Philadelphia loves. We love you or hate you, but as long as you're busting your ass, we're going to appreciate that. And that's what Buddy brought to the table.
I just go back to that whole Kevin Allen, I think it was, who they drafted high as like right tackle or left tackle. And he was like, he's out there killing grass. I'd rather just put a traffic cone out there and he could block better, or something along those lines.
Exactly.
And again, I know this is about Dallas, but I have to ask you, because you kind of went there. And this is going completely different, but do you think the fact that Andy Reid did stick up for his players so much, and we could actually I'm going to have you back on and talk more about this whole era, because I think it's going to open up a can of worms. Was that to the detriment of Donovan McNabb?
Yes.
Did he not allow?
I believe it was, because it didn't allow Donovan to take ownership. So it always had that disconnect with the fan base where we didn't know the true Donovan. At least I feel that way. I feel like he would always do the, pat himself on the chest or say, I got to do a better job. And that would be echoing what Andy Reid would say in the press conferences, was saying, I have to do a better job. Instead of saying, hey, we have to do a better job on offense and not singling one person out. I feel like he didn't allow Donovan to kind of take that leadership role. He protected him a little too much, which I think that's probably some of the angst and some of the, I don't want to say hatred or anything, but I mean, I feel like that's the disconnect between Donovan and the Philly fan base. Not us. Number 5 will always love us.
Absolutely. Hey, listen. And I've said from day one, I will always stick up for him. And basically, since I've started this podcast, I've done nothing but rip the guy. So
I get it.
I think maybe I have a little bit of underlying angst or hatred or something toward him, or bitterness or something, that maybe I should go to a therapist and kind of work out. But number 5 will always love you. So here's how I'm going to bring it back. I feel like Howard Stern now, bringing it back now to Dallas. Since we've been talking about McNabb, one of the biggest, I guess, moments in his career happened with Terrell Owens, who ultimately left Philly to go to Dallas.
Terrell Owens. I'll kill you if you call him Terrell.
T.O. But do you think that relationship before he went to Dallas could have been saved if Donovan would have manned up and stuck up for his teammate?
1,000%. Absolutely. I think it would have. And here we are. I mean, yeah, we're grateful for one Super Bowl, but that whole Andy Reid McNabb era would have been completely different. Dawkins probably gets a Super Bowl in that era, and Dawkins goes down as one of the greatest safeties, more so than what he already is. He deserved it. And I think if McNabb would have took that ownership, and I'm not blaming Andy Reid for that. I think McNabb still could have came out and took that ownership, but he was too much of an egotistical guy to do it. And he knew the prima donna that T.O. was, and he still just let it go. He could have reeled that in quick and resolved that, and they could have made it work. I mean, look what Brady did all those years in New England, restructuring his contract to build the team around him. McNabb could have did the same thing. Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Just making sure we're on the same page with that. Absolutely. And again, I do love number 5. I know it doesn't seem like that the way I talk about him, but I do. So speaking of Andy Reid, Donovan, and those teams, some of I think the best Eagles Cowboys memories, and we'll go back to some of the Buddy Ryan things. I think some of the best games happened with that team. and specifically Donovan in particular, one of the greatest plays I think I've ever seen on a Monday Night Football game. And where do you think I'm going with this one?
Scrambling for 13 seconds and throwing the Fred X 50 yards down the field. Absolutely. Absolutely. Your boy Freddie.
I like to thank God for my hands.
Yeah, exactly. Fred X, boy.
Yeah, hands down, one of my favorite. And then I forget, I think you were at this game too, was the 2008 game when basically the Eagles came into it because that was the year they had the tie and Donovan didn't know the rules, and then he got benched. And so they needed to come into that game. I think it was a 4:00 game. They needed the Houston Texans, I think, to beat the Bears. And then the Raiders, who were also terrible, to beat somebody who was a pretty decent team at the time, too, which both of them happened.
I think it was the Saints.
I think you're right. And it was an NFC team.
Yep.
And I remember it was one of the few times we've ever walked into a game late. And that's because we were watching to make sure, kind of figuring out what our next move. And then once we got into that game, I feel like we've been to a couple NFC championship games where they won. I feel like that was an electric crowd that night.
Absolutely. I always remember that game because that was the game where Lito picked it off at like the 1-yard line and he got to like the 30 and you knew he had open field and they started playing the Lito shuffle on his way to the end zone. He wasn't even in the end zone yet. And they started playing it over the loudspeaker. That I always remember that. And it was a good game.
And I know as I was researching some of the stuff, because I was really interested to see how the Dallas media and the Dallas fans felt about the rivalry. They just call it 44-7. Like that's all they say.
Yep.
Or it might have been 44-8, but whatever it is.
44-6.
Yeah, whatever the score was, that's all they call it. And everybody knows, and they're like, we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. Side note, the Astros just walked it off in the playoffs.
Did they really?
They had a 2-run home run in the bottom of the 9th to win it. Unreal.
Wow. Good thing I didn't put the money on the Mariners like I was thinking about. I was kicking myself when I saw that they were up, and I was like, damn, I should have. But so it worked out well then.
Yep. Hung a slider, and boom, he crushed it.
By the way, the Phillies under didn't really. That wasn't a good bet.
No, they went over on their own.
But so for your money, what is one of your favorite Eagles Dallas memories that just every time you think about or hear somebody talk about, you get fired up? Because I know I have mine, but what, like, I mean, when you just want to go run through a wall.
Yeah, the biggest moment for me is 4th and 1. They give it to Smith and they stop him again. Hearing that Merrill call makes me want to run through a brick wall. I have a microphone signed by Merrill Reese, and that's what the inscription says. It says they give it to Smith and they stop him again. So
that's awesome.
Just hearing that call brings goosebumps and makes me want to run through a wall every time I hear it. And the stupidity that day to go for it again against that front line is just it goes down in Eagles Dallas lore as one of the dumbest ideas to do it again. And it served them right. It was definitely the right call at the right time. And man, to hear Merrill say it, it just makes me, I feel like going out on the field and tackling somebody every single time.
Stop him again for the 3rd time.
Exactly.
But I remember actually just like John Madden's reaction was just absolute gold. What is he doing? No, that's not the 2-minute warning. Okay, they got to punt it now. What is he thinking? And then Pat Summerall is just trying to get the murder she wrote promo in.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, I don't know if you heard, she passed away today.
Oh, geez.
And so whenever I hear, they were like, Angela Lansbury died. She was like 97, but she's best known for Murder, She Wrote. And I'm just like, Pat Summerall, Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah. It's unreal. That was back before the Janet Jackson Super Bowl that we could actually listen to Merrill and it wasn't a 10-second delay.
Right.
Because now everything's all screwed up with the way they broadcast things. So that was back in the good days where you could turn the volume down. But those were the games when it was Eagles Dallas, where it was John Madden and Summerall. You didn't have Aikman and Buck, the horrible sportscasters they are. So that was back in the day where they actually had good sportscasters.
Did you hear what he said last night?
Oh,
that he's in trouble for?
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong, but that's coming from that same era, man. Like we're
Right.
all in the same era where that's what we say, and you get canceled for that now. Good thing he
Oh my
signed that
God.
Prime deal.
Yeah, I was gonna say we won't repeat it because the lawyers are in my ear saying we shouldn't say it.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
so I I know I have two more that I kind of want to touch on before I get into the big part of this rivalry. And the first is, I think, what really stemmed this hatred. And again, we know going back to 81, it was like the Dallas, we hate you, which I would love to, if you're listening or anybody knows that guy, let me
Yeah,
know because I would love to just talk to him, not even on the podcast, just talk to him and just shake his hand, and have a beer with him. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
um, but it was the 1987, the strike season, when for whatever reason, the Cowboys, and I think part of it was money, part of it was their pension or something, where hardly any of their players went on strike. They all crossed the picket line. And Tom Landry ran up the score. And against Buddy Ryan was miserable. Like he hated everything about those replacement players and basically told his guys, don't you dare cross that picket line,
Right.
especially in Philly, which was such a big union town. So when the real players came back, he called the fake spike with Randall Cunningham through the deep ball. I think it was to Byers, if I'm
Yeah, I
not
think it was.
mistaken.
Yeah.
Or it was either Byers or Chris Carter, drew the pass interference and just ran in the last touchdown. And I think to me, that was sort of what egged that on, because it was a long time before the Cowboys beat the Eagles after that.
Yeah. No, and I loved every second of it. I mean, I was young watching that, and probably listening to it, to be honest with you. But yeah, I definitely love that. And looking back on it now, I mean, that was Buddy. Like I said, I mean, that was Buddy Ryan. That was his mentality, where you do him wrong, he's going to do you wrong twice over. And I loved every second of it. I mean, I wish, obviously, if Buddy was coaching in today's world, he'd probably have to trim that back, or he'd probably get fired pretty quick. The cancel culture we live in today. But I mean,
He's being mean.
yeah, exactly. He called me a bad name. It is what it is. But I mean, that was the epitome of Buddy Ryan, if you ask me. I mean, that was, and I think that was the start of the team kind of getting his personality, you know. And they built that team around him in that regard. I mean, defensive teams, it was incredible, where they just pin their ears back and they go after you.
Absolutely. And I think, and kind of sidestepping again, and I feel like I do this a lot, but that season they lost 4 games, 1 because of the strike, and then 3 because of the replacement players. They finished, I think it was like 7-8. And then the next year was the 88 team that went and won the division and lost in the Fog Bowl. Do you think the strike hurt the development of that team? And since this is a what if podcast, what if there was no strike? Do you think they maybe would have gotten over that hump with Buddy?
Yeah. I mean, who's to say? I would say, yeah, I think it probably did hurt their development a little bit. I mean, the Fog Bowl was what it was. There's no controlling Mother Nature, as we all know. But I think having another solid year together to build off of probably would have propelled them. And then maybe in 91, things go different, or maybe even in 90, maybe it excels that a year. So we don't have to worry about the what if Jerome died, or what if this happened. Maybe everything happens a year earlier. So the year that Randall gets hurt is the year after they won the Super Bowl, because they already developed and got everybody together, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you got to figure that's 25% of the season. A guy like they had those young guys. It was Jerome Brown's rookie year. So you had
Yeah.
Brown, Simmons, and Reggie White. And just imagine how many more sacks Reggie would have had in 4 more games too. But
Exactly.
so you know what's coming. Speaking of Buddy and the Cowboys, Bounty Bowl 1, Bounty Bowl 2. What do you think?
It wouldn't happen today. I know that.
No, it had this guy from the Saints, Sean Payton, missed the whole year because
exactly.
of it.
That's what I mean. It wouldn't happen today, but I think somehow Buddy would probably be able to still get the message across in the locker room. Nobody would speak of it, but somehow that message would get across, and there would be a target on somebody's back. But I mean, that's how football was played. I'm gonna gun at your top guy and try to take him out. You don't want to take food off somebody's table, off their family's table, but at the same time, you're trying to win a championship. It's cutthroat, man. You got to go after somebody, and that's what you do, especially if it's Dallas, right? I mean, that's what
Always.
you do. I mean, it has to be. That's and going back to the rivalry, growing up in school, you always had these, and this goes to it. I mean, the people growing up around us, Cowboys fans, always rubbing in your face. Oh, we're this, we're that, we're so much better than you. How many Super Bowls? How many Super Bowls? That's all we had to hear growing up. So for me, that's where my hatred comes in. The Giants fans, they never said that. They never said it because they won it with a backup quarterback. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. Shout out to Nikki.
Hey, I was going to say, whoa.
Exactly. But it's the principle of the whole thing. You know what I mean? We never heard that from Washington. We never heard that from the Giants fans. It was always the Dallas fans. So I think when bringing it back to Bounty Bowl, I mean, I love every second of it. I wish we could do it again because I feel like that's the sport we live in. But now, I mean, if you touch a quarterback's hip, you're getting a passer or a roughing the passer call. Those roughing the passer calls yesterday were absolutely ridiculous. You might as well just put flags on the quarterbacks now. It's unheard of. So you imagine the calls today when we were doing the Bounty Bowl. Oh my God, that'd be ridiculous. There'd be
guys would be missing.
penalties.
Guys would be missing 8 games for a sack.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about how Reggie used to tackle people. He used to put all his weight on people
and just come right down. Yeah,
exactly. That was roughing the passer every single time. Now
he probably would have gotten a lot of illegal head slaps too. Not that he slapped in the head, but he would
illegal
just
use
pick
the
a guy
hands.
up,
Absolutely, yeah,
one hand and just toss him.
They probably would have created a Reggie rule is what they probably would have did with the way that he used to just push people out of the way with the arm. They probably would have created a rule saying, no, you can't do that. As soft as the NFL's getting.
You got to count 2 seconds before you.
Yeah,
5 Mississippi.
Exactly. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Yeah.
So Bounty Bowl 2. And I've talked a lot on this pod about just the unfairness of the way the media treats the fans in Philly and how it's just easy to say, oh, but you threw snowballs at Santa or you booed Santa. Now, they came pretty hard at Jerry Jones in that game, or Jimmy Johnson in that game. Justified the rap Philly fans get for that. Obviously, it probably wouldn't happen today, but at the time, was it?
I mean, you could probably flip a coin and say I could say it either way. I mean, they probably did cross the line that day with Jerry or Jimmy Johnson. Not saying anything's yeah, exactly. Not saying anything, is justified in what they did. But I mean, Eagles, Dallas rivalry, emotional things. I mean, sometimes it gets the best of you. But it's not like they, jumped out of the stands and tackled him or went after him outside in the parking lot or anything like that, So where we've seen in other stadiums and other areas, they do stuff like that, knock on wood.
Chicago.
Exactly. So, I don't think it was completely justified, but I understand the media's take on it. I really do.
I just think it's lazy.
It is. I mean,
look, they're always throwing snowballs at everybody.
Well, that's the thing. Overall, the take is extremely lazy and it's a bad rap. Because I think having season tickets like we do and sitting where we sit, where we have opposing teams' fans come into our area every single game, I bet you all those fans that have sat there over the years will have nothing but glowing things to say about Eagles fans because we bust their balls back and forth. But at the end of the day, we've made friends with a lot of opposing teams' fans that have come back again for the second time, and they sat in the same seats because they wanted to see us. So that's a pretty cool accomplishment, pretty cool thing.
The one exception would be the guy's girlfriend who punched me in the face for talking shit on him, even though we shook hands after it.
Yeah,
I still don't understand that. She just punched me in the face. I'd
be willing to bet, they're probably not married. He probably saw the writing on the wall and got out. Hopefully.
I think he was secretly an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
All right, one last big memory I have, and I'll remember this, and I'll probably give you one name, and I guarantee you can tell me which Dallas game I'm talking about. James Willis.
The interception.
And who did he
Yep.
pitch it to?
Uh, was that Eric Allen?
No, a little bit later. Number 23.
Oh, Troy Vincent. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And he pitches to Vincent and he's running
Yeah.
down the sideline.
Yeah. That was at Dallas, right? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I think that game sticks out to me, because it was at Dallas. And I
Yeah.
remember I was working at Charlie's and Rick had it on the
Gotcha.
loudspeaker 94. And I just remember we were running, all of us were running around high-fiving the
Yeah.
idiot shoppers who were not into the game. They're like, what the hell are you guys doing?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So what is your all-time favorite memory of this rivalry?
Well, I got two. Besides the fourth one. I'd be remiss in not mentioning the pickle juice. I mean, that's obviously goes down in folklore as an incredible opening day. Deuce Staley, I think he had 200 yards rushing that day.
He did. Yep.
And it totally contributed to the pickle juice for not cramping up. Great idea, great thought process, and it still lives down to this day. And one of the ones that will always stick out for me is Michael Irvin, when he got injured and ended his career. Everybody will constantly say that we cheered that he got injured and cheered that he ended his career. Even Michael Irvin has come out and said that wasn't the case. They cheered because it was a third down play and we got to stop. Once they realized somebody was down and injured, they didn't cheer. They cheered when he got off the field because of obvious reasons. That's what class people do.
Right.
They cheered real loud because it was a third down stop. So that's another one of those misconceptions that, we get a bad rap for. But that's when I knew, for me personally, that's when I knew that the triplets was on the outside. It was that time was almost over. I didn't know that our time was coming with the Donovan years. I just knew that Dallas's was over. So that felt good for me, and
Yes.
Here we are, how many years later, the Dallas era is still over. So gotta love it.
So speaking of the Dallas era being over, got a backup quarterback coming in on Sunday night.
Yeah.
Been playing pretty well since he's been in there.
Pretty well. Yeah, absolutely.
What's your take on Sunday's game?
So I think there's a lot of hype around it. And I like what Jalen's doing, and he's just taking it one game at a time. Telling everybody we got to go 1-0 this week. Sirianni's preaching that. I think coming into the link is going to be eye-opening for a Sunday night game, and the way the Eagles are playing right now. I know Dallas is playing well. Don't get me wrong. Their defense is not something that we should look past, but this isn't the 85 Bears coming into the link on Sunday. They're not that good. I would put our defense up against theirs any day of the week. Now, Michael Parsons, with our offensive line, we're gonna have to do some schemes and keep him at bay. But luckily, Jalen knows how to run a little bit and can probably avoid some of those. I mean, Mike is still going to get his. But I see the Eagles winning. I don't think it's a high-scoring game. I see them winning 21-17. I think it's another close game, but I think the Eagles pulled out 21-17.
Now, if they pull this off and win, do you think they go into the bye 6-0? Like, is this a special year? Like 2017, or is that
I think it has the potential. I think it definitely has the potential, but being a Philadelphia fan, especially an Eagles fan, we can't get too far ahead of ourselves, because we've thought, those early 2000 years, we thought that this was our year, and one thing after another. The thing that I like about this is Sirianni is very likable. He got them all kind of gelling together. They're a great team. They got that continuity, and it is very eerie that it does remind me of the 17 team,
right,
where when injuries happen, that next guy mentality, somebody steps up and does just as well, if not better, because they're hungry. They want to play. They got that dog in them, right? So it's going to be interesting. I don't think either way, no matter what happens Sunday, isn't going to dictate the rest of the year. But I think if they get over that hump and win Sunday, it could catapult them into, who knows, man, they could go 10-0, 11-0 before they see a loss. So we'll see what happens. And
Don Shula is not even here to toast the loss with his other players.
I know. There's not many of them left, man. There's only a handful of them. So this would be a good year to do it. But as we saw in with New England, you can't get too cocky because that New
No.
England offense was almost unstoppable, and the Giants went in there and held them to 14 points. So,
I agree.
we'll see what happens.
All right, last question before we run out of time here. Chris Cabot, will he be in a box on Sunday night?
I think he has to. He may come late because I'm sure he's going to be elsewhere. That man flies around like 7 different places on Sundays, but that's his boy. As long as Cooper's starting, he's going to be there. He's definitely going to be there. Maybe he'll be in the same box as Bradley Cooper. Who knows?
Do you think he can get us in the box?
Well, you got to pull some strings with that. I mean, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I would love to. I'd love to hang out with him and bust Cooper's balls for him, just joke around with him. Be good to see him.
Chris, if you're listening, give me a call. Just kidding.
Yes, sir.
Unless you're going to call me.
Yeah.
All right. So we are out of time. Brother, thank you for joining me. We definitely are going to have to do this again. Hopefully, we just spent all this time and it comes out and everybody else gets to enjoy it. I have no idea what I'm doing sometimes when it comes to the editing, but I think we should be good. But again, thank you.
Yes,
Go
sir.
Birds.
Go Birds and Kelsey Brothers. You got something coming for you, man. We're coming for you.
Let's go. Listen, we're getting our feet wet. Coming for you, Jason. Coming. And by the way, Travis, fuck you for seriously scoring 4 touchdowns on 26 yards last night. Come on, dude. Like, really? Like, I went to bet 80% favorite to win that game.
That's what he does.
And lost pretty bad to Jalen.
That's what he does.
Mahomes.
Dude's a beast. He's a beast.
Yeah, but of all people to lose to. But all right, brother. I will talk to you. Thank you for stopping by.
Absolutely.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
And happy Fuck Dallas week.
Happy Fuck Dallas week. Love it.
All right, man. I will talk to you.
All right, brother. Later.
Later.